Well, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today. Let me just introduce you all very quickly. We've got a very strong group of cybersecurity professionals with us. First off, David D'Agostino, Vice President of Integer Security. Jason Griffin, Vice President of Cybersecurity Strategy at Integer Security. Aaron Rice, Senior Security Architect at Integer Security. Doug Foster, Virtual Chief Security Officer at TechMD. And last but not least, Brian Hannafy, Chief Revenue Officer at TechMD and Integer Security. Really great group. We've got very high expectations here. All right, so let me just start off by asking you about those first few hours when an incident is detected. You've all been part of many of these. What are those first few hours like?
If you're running a business and you go in one day and how do you know you've had an incident? And we can walk you through a whole bunch of different things that can happen that will show that you've had an incident. But it's, I can't get to my files. Someone received an email that I didn't send. I see a rule in my inbox that's sending email to somebody I don't know. The files are all encrypted. I can't open any of my files, right? Those are real life. This is what happens. This is when you know you've got a problem. And that's when the anxiety kicks in. You no longer have control of your systems. And so if you've never been in that situation, that can be overwhelming and overpowering. And then you go into the fear, right? The responsibility, right? Is this my fault? Did I not do enough? Is it my area of responsibility? What's the impact of this going to be on our business? And then what's the future? How long does this take? How's this going to impact my employees, right? And what are my customers going to say? So those, it's not real life until it happens to you. We don't want it to happen to anybody, but it's the hardest part of our business is describing to folks, not just the technical stuff, right? We can tell you have an open port on a firewall or someone clicked on the wrong email, but really it's after that happens, what does it look like and how does it feel? And then ultimately, what's the financial impact?
Most incidents, quote unquote, start with detection of the incident. And so when you are talking about things like the users noticing something about their email being off or a file being encrypted or whatever else, there are a lot of other things that kind of lead up to that. But it's what kinds of things do you have in place to detect things that are unusual, right? So these things that are happening are unusual for the user to all of a sudden can't send email. That's something different from what they're used to seeing. And in an environment where you are putting due diligence in, where you are being prepared for this kind of thing, or you have a complete cybersecurity program, you have a better idea of what normal is. And so smaller changes and smaller things that are different throw that red flag and say, hey, someone needs to look into this. And that allows you to get that detection sooner before there's an impact.
Well, our first response to anything that looks like it's going to be something, an actual incident, would be to shut down all communications, not the systems, just communications, meaning shut access to the firewall off, shut them off, and maybe their network switches that they have in the closet, which allows everything to communicate to each other. So if you shut all that down, nothing can talk to each other. You do hopefully keep minimize the horizontal movement of the bad actor if there is one, or just that things happening beyond the actual incident, until people can come in and take a look at everything.
What is the emotional roller coaster like for the response team and the client while the incident is being investigated?
I think it's going to be a little bit different depending on how it was reported, right? So if it is something that is customer reported, it not only brings in the feeling of we need to figure out what's going on, but also the how did we miss this in the first place? What did we miss? So that adds like a whole extra layer on top of the stress that's already involved, at least from the side of Integer and me, who has these customers that I'm trying to take care of. But in general, when you're coming in, you see that alert, you're digging in for the first time here. You get the moment that this doesn't look quite right. And then it's how many things do I need to look at? What kinds of stuff do I need to get into? And you start picking apart and you're looking for that smoking gun. You're looking for that thing that's like, aha, that's what it is right there. Okay, I'm getting a handle on this and I know what my next step is.
I think from the business leader's perspective, when it's reported to you that you have an incident, first of all, how did that happen to me? You're violated. It's just like any crime, right? It's just like your house getting broken into, your car getting broken into. It's like, why would someone do this to me? And then it's, how did this happen? Right? What did we not prepare for? What did we not protect ourselves against? How did this happen? And then the next stage is, we're not even thinking about prevention at this point, right? We're thinking about, how's this going to impact my customers? Am I going to be able to produce product, deliver services? Am I going to be able to make payroll? You know, as leaders in business, we think about how we grow, how do we get people moving, how are we improving our client relationship?
Mm.
Well, this does exactly the opposite of all that. It's you know, it's a negative against all of the things that most businesses are trying to do. And so, then there's the responsibility piece, right? Good business leaders feel responsible to their employees. They feel responsible to their customers. They feel responsible to their shareholders if they have them. And so they feel responsible when this breach happens. And so they take it very personally. There's a lot of emotion involved.
I would add to that, Brian, that the level of preparedness dramatically impacts emotion. And when you can have an incident response playbook that you tabletop and exercise on a regular basis and annually would be our recommendation at a minimum, that's going to really curb the emotions, and we can simulate this happening in real time, and that will have a dramatic lasting impact on those emotions. In all of the incident response plans that I've reviewed, none of them have a bullet point to find emotional zero. It's just not there. The best thing you can do is to exercise that written incident response plan and have one. Know where it lives and know what you're going to do next.
The other thing that we really stress is that all of these things add layers of protection, but typically we see that last layer of defense, that human firewall, is where we get impacted when an inadvertent user clicks on something that looks so realistic, and the sophistication's evolving daily. And it happens. And preparing our clients' mindset to not if, but a when mentality, to start to build this out and prepare, because it's a when. If it never happens, wonderful. But we have to have that when mentality instead of